You were taught to believe that reality is a logical, predictable sequence. But what if I told you that this is nothing more than a well-constructed illusion? What if what you call real life is just one timeline among infinite other possibilities that already exist, and that you keep ignoring without realizing it? Baby, what's holding you back isn't lack of action, but the addiction to being the same person, collapsing the same world over and over. Because the truth is simple. You don't live the reality you want. You live the reality that matches the frequency of your current identity. And the craziest part of all this is that to access a new future, you don't need a miracle. You need an adjustment, internal, subtle, precise, quantum. In this video, I'm going to show you why your life keeps repeating the same patterns, and how the true quantum shift doesn't happen in the world, but inside the observer. It doesn't matter where you are right now. If you stay until the end, you'll understand why your reality begins to change the moment you change the point from which you're observing it. And if this topic already resonated inside you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because here we don't talk about superficial motivation, we talk about accessing dimensions where your soul is already waiting for you. The first shift, the invisible loop. Why your life repeats the same stories. Some people wake up every day wondering why life doesn't change, yet they keep pressing the same button on the universe's remote control. It's always the same script, same type of boss, same type of fight, same tight bill at the end of the month, and that eternal almost. But what if the problem isn't the world out there but the pattern inside? For a long time he thought it was bad luck. It felt like the universe had something against him. Every time he was about to move forward, something went wrong. A project stalled, a relationship collapsed, a new opportunity vanished without explanation. It was as if the scenery changed, but the characters were always the same. Until one day he stopped. Literally. He sat in silence and asked, what inside me is attracting all of this? It was one of those moments that hurt more than any external answer, because recognizing the loop is realizing you helped write the script. Even without wanting to, you hit play on that old movie again. And it wasn't lack of will. It was familiarity. The mind said, I want to change, but the body felt safe in the old. He understood that the brain prefers the known, even when it hurts, rather than risking the unknown. The invisible loop is comfortable, because even a prison can have a couch and Wi-Fi. It's like opening Netflix and complaining that nothing new ever shows up. But deep down, you're the one pressing the same button. You say you want change, but still click on the same title, because you already know what to expect, already know where you'll cry, and you've grown used to that emotional drama. He remembered a time when every job felt the same. Same low salary, same toxic environment, same sense of not belonging. It was like changing companies but carrying the same identity. The same I'm not good enough stuck on his badge, and the quantum field, of course, responded not to what he wanted, but to what he was. The curious thing is that even in friendships, the cycle repeated. People drifted away without explanation. Connections started strong and faded quickly, until one day he looked at himself with honesty and realized, I'm not choosing differently, I'm just disguising the same thing better. It was hard to accept, but that was when the loop began to lose strength. The invisible loop has this power. It camouflages itself with new colors, but carries the same frequency. And the universe doesn't respond to visual novelty, but to vibrational tone. If you feel the same, you manifest the same. As simple as that, and just as frightening. The key was hidden in a painful truth. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are collapsing into form without noticing. And what collapses your reality isn't just what you think, but what you believe, feel, and silently repeat. In other words, on autopilot, you are the one renewing the contract with the loop. So he began observing his own patterns with more presence. He would note what kept repeating, the emotions that surfaced, the default thoughts, not to blame himself, but to understand, to break the cycle, like someone who finally discovers where the boat is leaking and decides to stop just removing water with a bucket. And the most magical part, the loop doesn't need to be destroyed with anger. It can be dissolved with awareness. When you recognize the cycle, it loses power. When you stop pressing the automatic button, The movie changes. And it's at this point, when the cycle begins to reveal itself, that a new kind of question emerges. If all of this was repeating because of me, then how far does my power of choice go? This is where the vision begins to expand and the quantum field starts responding. The second shift, the quantum vision, reality as a field of possibilities. When he first heard that all versions of your life already exist, it sounded beautiful but confusing. What do you mean they already exist? And why do I only live the hardest one? The answer didn't come from a book. It came from a feeling. Every time he changed on the inside, something shifted on the outside. Reality wasn't a fixed, unchangeable block where everything was already defined. It was more like a massive menu, and he just needed to learn how to choose consciously. But unlike a restaurant, where you point with your finger, in the quantum field, you choose with frequency, perception, and alignment. He realized the universe isn't linear, it's vibrational. And that changes everything. Because if the universe responds to frequency, then living on autopilot is like spinning a roulette wheel in the dark. The quantum field is like a giant cosmic radio. All the stations are playing at the same time, but you only hear the station you're tuned into. And the question is no longer, what do I want to hear? But what am I vibrating with right now? That's when he understood he didn't have to create from scratch. The version of life he wanted already existed, with more peace, more connection, more freedom. It was just tuned to a different signal, and the only way to access it was to change the inner transmitter. The big turning point came when he heard about the double-slit experiment. He didn't need to understand quantum physics deeply to grasp the essential point. Observation changes the behavior of the particle. In other words, the simple act of perceiving differently changes what shows up. Not because the world changes, but because the observer has changed. At that moment, something clicked deeply. He wasn't just a passenger in the universe. He was part of the mechanism that decides which version of the universe appears. And that was an invitation, but also a responsibility. Because once he recognized that, he could no longer outsource the results. He began noticing subtle signs, days when he chose to look through the lens of gratitude, and the day flowed lighter, moments when synchronicities appeared after a quiet internal shift. And he realized the field doesn't respond to force, it responds to fine-tuned frequency. Like a song that only plays when you're truly ready to hear it. This new vision freed him from a lot of guilt, but it also challenged him to leave behind victim mode. Because if there's a field of infinite possibilities, repeating "my life is hopeless" is like standing in front of an infinite library and saying there's nothing worth reading. He started imagining his life as a maze of doors. All of them exist, but they only open when he turns the right internal key. And that key isn't made of brute effort, but of clarity, presence, and conscious choice. Now he knew he was in a field that responds to being, not wanting. That every time he tried to control, he blocked the flow. But every time he created space, something new appeared. Not because it fell from the sky, but because he changed the place he was observing from. And it is from this new place that the journey of the true observer begins. The third shift, the true observer. It's not just what you think, it's what you are. For a long time he believed that thinking positively was enough. He repeated affirmations like a mantra. It's going to work. I am prosperous. I deserve the best. But life didn't respond. It was like the words hit the ceiling and bounced back. And that started generating more frustration than faith. Then he realized something. The conscious mind is just the tip of the iceberg. And as long as the subconscious keeps vibrating the opposite, the quantum field will collapse reality based on what's underneath, not what's on top. It's not what you say. It's what you truly carry inside. Studies confirm this. Only 5% of our day is governed by conscious thoughts. The other 95% are automatic habits, emotional memories, tensions the body repeats without the mind even noticing. And the field responds to the whole package. He remembered a time when he said he trusted the flow of life, but deep down he was tense. He slept with his jaw clenched, woke up with a tight chest. The mind said, "I trust," but the body screamed, "I'm afraid." And that fear, was exactly what the universe mirrored back. It's like sending an audio message to the universe. Your mind sends the pretty words, but the emotion behind it, the tone of voice, the shallow breath, they reveal what you're really transmitting, and the field responds to the tone, not the text. He started observing how incoherent his body language was. He spoke of abundance but frowned at his credit card bill. He spoke of trust but walked hunched over, worried, restless. It was as if every cell was sabotaging what his mouth tried to declare. And that made him dive into the body as an active part of manifestation. That's when he understood. The true observer is not just the thinker. It's the one who embodies a frequency with coherence. Beliefs, emotions, posture, breath, all together, all shouting to the field, "This is who I am now." He remembered a striking experience. There was a big opportunity ahead. He told everyone, "It'll work, I'm ready." But deep down, he was preparing for failure. And of course, it failed. Because the field only responds to congruence. It's like the universe receives your request, but checks the emotional signature before delivering. If there's contradiction in the field, the request is returned. No punishment, no drama, just a precise vibrational response. And the body holds everything. Since childhood, we've stored memories of pain, fear, rejection. These records become the default settings of our frequency. And even when we want something new, those memories pull us back into the old reality. So he began to ask himself, how does my body react when I speak about what I desire? Does it feel expanded or contracted, safe or threatened? That's where the key was. The body doesn't lie. The practice became a ritual. Before affirming anything, he'd close his eyes and feel, is my body aligned with what I'm saying? If not, he wouldn't force it. He would adjust the vibration first and only then speak to the field. And that changed everything. He stopped repeating empty phrases and began embodying real feelings. He stopped trying to convince the universe and started convincing himself. And in that new internal space, the answers began arriving. Because finally, he was fully aligned with the frequency. And it is from that new wholeness, where mind, body, and emotion come into alignment, that perception begins to transform, and the field, once opaque, starts showing signs of change. And the turning point is closer than it seems. The fourth shift, the turning point. When perception changes, the field responds. There's a moment in the journey when everything looks the same on the outside, but something inside shifts. It's not a scream, it's not an explosion, it's more like a whisper, but a whisper that changes the course of your entire reality. He remembered it clearly. He was sitting in the same room as always, with the same bills, the same fears, the same silence around him. But that day, instead of asking, "Why me?" he asked, "Who am I being inside all of this?" That question changed the game, because for the first time, he took the focus off the situation and turned it toward the state of the observer. It was no longer about what the world was doing to him, but about what he had been projecting onto the world. He realized he'd been living as a victim in many areas. With money, he was always the one being taken advantage of. In love, the abandoned one. At work, the unfairly treated. And that role was comfortable but deeply limiting. So he decided to run an experiment. For a few days, he would try living as a silent protagonist. He didn't need to prove anything or confront anyone. He just needed to shift his internal state and observe. What would change on the outside? In the first few days, the world looked the same, but something felt different. He reacted with more calm, more presence, more inner space. And soon the signs began to show up. Small, unexpected kindnesses, new invitations, even a forgotten compliment. It was as if life had taken a step toward him. Not because he shouted, but because he tuned into a new frequency of presence. The feeling was that the quantum field was saying, now you're finally available for the new. It's like changing the camera lens in the middle of a movie. The story is the same, but the angle, the sharpness, the focus, everything shifts. And with that, the role you play in the story also shifts. You stop being the supporting actor in pain and become the author of expansion. This turning point doesn't require 1,000 courses or fancy rituals. It only requires presence and honesty. Which version of me is alive right now? That simple question, when asked sincerely, has the power to completely reorganize your timeline. Because when the observer changes, the field responds. Not like instant magic, but as an inevitable reflection. Just as a mirror doesn't change until you move, reality doesn't bend until you change how you stand before it. And the most beautiful part is that once this turning point happens, you can never fully return to the old state. You might slip, but your awareness has expanded too far to fit back into the old role. And this is where the body begins to resist, trying to pull you back into the familiar. The fifth shift, the body as a prison, the addiction to the familiar that pulls you back. The first time he tried to sustain a new state, it was like trying to keep a candle lit in the middle of a storm. At first it was beautiful, gratitude, trust, lightness. But a small challenge was all it took for everything to revert to the old pattern. It was as if something inside him screamed, "Go back to the safe place." And that safe place was anything but pleasant. It was made of fear, anxiety, a sense of urgency. But it was familiar. And the body, addicted to the chemicals of the past, preferred the known discomfort to the unknown expansion. He started noticing how his body seemed to sabotage the new. Every time he tried to act with courage, anxiety would hit. When he decided to trust, his stomach would tighten. It was as if every attempt at change triggered an alarm inside his nervous system. That's when he understood. The body doesn't just store the memory of what you lived, it stores the biochemical addiction to your old identity. And when you try to change, it feels like it's losing something. Losing what it knows as me. It's like having a dog that's lived its whole life in a small backyard. You open the gate to let it run in a vast field, but it runs straight back to the cramped little house. Not because it's dumb, but because that's what it knows as home. The body's biology reacts to change as if it were a threat, even if the change is good, because the nervous system seeks safety, not growth. And that's why every step outside the known activates quiet resistance. A resistance the mind doesn't always notice. He remembered the time he decided to change his relationship with money. He visualized, studied, took new actions. For a few days, he felt expansion. But suddenly, an overwhelming urge to spend impulsively came over him. It was the body trying to recreate the old, familiar discomfort. The same thing happened in relationships. When he chose to open up to a lighter, healthier connection, an irrational fear of abandonment surfaced, and without realizing, he sabotaged the bond himself, because the body still associated love with pain. In those moments, it's easy to think the change didn't work, but in truth, it's actually a great sign. It means the body has noticed the new identity and is trying to pull you back to the old track. It's the last resistance before the leap. So he began working with kindness. Instead of fighting the body, he began speaking to it. Conscious breathing, walks in the sun, light touches on the chest. Anything that could say, "We are safe here, we can change." And over time, the body began learning to trust. True change isn't just mental. It must be embodied. Lived in the gesture, in the step, in the tone of voice. The body needs to feel the new frequency as safe. And that only happens through repetition and presence. He understood that every time he resisted the new, it wasn't failure. It was biology asking for time. And that each micro-victory, breathing instead of exploding, staying instead of fleeing, silencing instead of reacting, were new codes being installed. It was in this phase that he grew the most in silence, not because everything was flowing, but because even with the urge to return to the old, he chose day after day to stay with the new. And it's exactly here that identity begins to shift in frequency. The sixth shift, identity as frequency. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. For a long time, he believed that simply desiring was enough. He wanted abundance, love, recognition. He made lists, wrote down intentions, repeated affirmations, but it seemed like the universe wasn't listening. And then came the question that changed everything. Who am I being? It was a sweet punch of reality, because he understood that the quantum field doesn't deliver what you ask for with words, but what you emit as your vibrational identity. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. It was like wanting to live as the protagonist, but still thinking, acting, and feeling like a background character. It didn't match. The vibration didn't support the request, and the field simply reflected that mismatch back to him. He began observing himself closely. When he said, "I am prosperous," was he really feeling prosperous, or was he still making decisions rooted in fear of lack? Did his routine reflect trust, or scarcity disguised as effort? These questions hurt, but they opened doors. He started testing a new way of living. Instead of just asking, he began to embody. Instead of saying, "I want love," he created space for it. A lighter schedule, a more welcoming home, a more available heart. Like someone already living the life they desire. He began making decisions like a prosperous person would, not by spending carelessly, but by no longer acting in panic. He saved money with gratitude, not with fear. He appreciated what he had, even if it wasn't much, and the field began responding more fluidly. It's like playing a role in a play. You don't have to wait for the script to change, you just step into the right character. When you live like a protagonist, the lines of the protagonist begin to show up for you. But this shift wasn't just behavioral, it was energetic. He felt the difference in his body, as in the way he walked, breathed, smiled. He was embodying the new version. And he didn't have to fake it, because the change was internal. It wasn't about tricking the universe, it was about becoming truly compatible with what he desired. And that required practice, presence, repetition. In relationships, for example, he stopped chasing. He began treating himself as someone worthy of reciprocal love, not with arrogance, but with self-honor. And curiously, life began to bring people who vibrated at exactly that new frequency. That also changed the way he spoke. His words stopped being armor and started becoming extensions of his vibration. He spoke less about lack, more about possibility, less about wounds, more about lessons learned. He realized that the new identity wasn't a role he was acting. It was an expanded version of who he had always been, but it had been buried under layers of fear. And now, slowly, it was rising, not through effort, but through alignment. And the more he sustained this new self, the more the field validated his choice with real experiences. It wasn't just visualization, it was embodied vibration. And when that becomes natural, the micro-choices of daily life start to reflect the new script. The seventh shift, micro-shift, the power of small daily alignments. At the beginning of his quantum journey, he thought the shift would come from a big moment, something epic, cinematic, full of lights and signs. But over time, he realized, real transformation doesn't happen in a single day. It's built through consistent, almost invisible micro-choices. He began to observe his daily routine with more presence, and noticed small moments where the old pattern took over, the impatient sigh, the automatic reply, the thought whispering, "This won't work." And that's when he decided to initiate the micro-shifts. Instead of exploding, he took a deep breath. Instead of complaining, he whispered gratitude. Instead of ignoring his body, he did a quick check-in. These actions didn't seem magical, but they were subtly realigning his frequency. It was during one of those weeks that everything changed. He chose to live 7 days in a state of conscious choice. Nothing drastic, just full attention to the small gestures. And slowly, the climate of life began to shift, as if he were tuning an instrument that had always been out of tune. He started noticing tiny but powerful decisions, like no longer saying, "I'm broke," and instead saying, "I'm organizing my finances," like drinking water with presence, like replying with softness where before he'd used sarcasm. Each choice was a new note in the symphony of the field. He also noticed that micro-shifts bring early peace, because by acting in alignment with the new identity, you begin to feel now what you once thought you'd feel only later. You access the feeling of abundance before the money arrives, and the field responds to vibration, not to bank balances. It's like driving a long road. You don't need to turn the wheel 90 degrees. Adjustments of 2 or 3 centimeters already change the entire destination. Micro-shifts work just like that, small intentions that realign your timeline. In love, He stopped asking for idealized love and started being more loving toward himself, left notes for himself, rested without guilt, cleared his physical and emotional space, and in the simple things, he started vibrating the frequency of reciprocity. On the hardest days, micro-shifts rescued his vibration. Even in pain, he chose to breathe with presence. Even in fear, he told himself, "This is part of the path too." It wasn't about perfection, it was about persistence in coherence. He noticed that micro-alignments create macro-realities, and that no one changes identity in a single step. It's the loving repetition of the new that installs change in the body. It's the gentle gesture, the chosen thought, the cultivated silence. All of it builds the foundation for a new frequency. The beauty of the micro-shift is that it fits into the now. You don't need the perfect setting or anyone's approval. You just need presence and intention. And when that becomes a lifestyle, the quantum leap happens without noise. It's not that he became someone else overnight. He just stopped being who he wasn't. And that alone is a miracle in motion. Because when you begin to act as who you already are, the universe doesn't argue. It simply confirms. And with time, these small alignments become automatic, natural part of your field. Breath becomes response, silence becomes power, simplicity becomes code. And it's within this new field that reality begins to bend before you. The eighth shift. When reality begins to bend, signs that the shift has happened. At first, it seemed like nothing was changing. He was doing the inner alignments, tending to his frequency, observing the micro-shifts. But the outside world still showed traces of the old. Until one day, he noticed, the air around him felt different. It wasn't a specific event. It was a sequence of subtleties, an unexpected invitation, an unlikely phone call, a new person with a precise message. Reality was beginning to gently bend. Synchronicities became common. People he was thinking about would show up. Phrases he needed to hear appeared in books, videos, even on street signs. It felt like the universe was whispering to him in secret. And finally, he was listening. The weather of life changed too. There used to be constant tension, non-stop rushing. Now, there was more space. Not that everything was easy, but everything felt lighter. And lightness, he learned, is one of the first signs of the shift. He began to notice that things that used to destabilize him no longer had as much power. A criticism didn't hurt as much. A delay no longer triggered anxiety. It was as if his center had become stronger, more grounded. The inner signs were even more revealing. Less drama, more clarity, less haste, more presence. Less desire to prove something, more desire to simply be. The mind was still active, but now there were pauses between the thoughts. Silences that weren't empty. They were filled with meaning. And in those spaces, he found peace. He also noticed that the body reacted differently. His breath was deeper, his sleep more restorative, his heart beat with less fear, and his stomach no longer held that old tightness. It was as if the body was recognizing its new vibrational home. His choices began to shift spontaneously, not out of obligation, but out of coherence. He started saying no with love and yes with truth. He let go of connections that no longer spoke to his soul and attracted others that seemed to come straight from the consciousness of the field. Even time began to feel different. Things that used to take forever flowed. Things that used to require force happened naturally. And he realized reality adjusts to the new rhythm of who you are being. It's like leaving one season and entering another. You still see a few old clouds, but the wind, the scent, the light are already from a different place. You know something has changed, even if the world is still getting used to the new you. This transition may seem quiet, but it's powerful, because it shows that the field doesn't respond to urgency, but to the consistency of being, and the being has already anchored into a new frequency. These signs aren't the end of the journey. They are only the beginning of a new timeline, a confirmation that alignment is working and that the shift is being sustained. And it is right here that the real challenge emerges, to remain in this new state. The ninth shift, living on the new timeline, how to sustain the quantum shift. The hardest part isn't waking up, it's staying awake when the world tries to lull you back to sleep. After the shift happens, the real test begins. Living as someone who has already crossed over, even when the old reality tries to pull you back. Because the mind craves novelty, but the body still longs for the old. Old habits knock on the door disguised as comfort. Distractions return with force, and the universe watches. Will you sustain the new, or just visit it briefly? He understood that living on a new timeline is not a magical event. It's a daily vibrational practice, and for that, he needed to create simple rituals, not rigid, but sacred. Inner anchors to remind him who he chose to be. Each morning, he asked himself a powerful question. Which version of me will I be today? That question reorganized everything. It wasn't about goals or productivity. It was about identity, presence, and intention. Throughout the day, he practiced body check-ins. He would ask, where am I contracting right now? Shallow breath, clenched jaw, racing thoughts. There was always a silent invitation to return inward, and in those moments, he realigned body and spirit. At night, instead of judging himself, he practiced loving review. He asked, where could I have chosen better today? And instead of guilt, he offered kindness. With each adjustment, a new program was installed. With each conscious slip, a new root was planted. He realized that repetition creates reality, but not the unconscious repetition of suffering, the intentional repetition of presence. The more he repeated the new self, the more that self became his new normal. He began surrounding himself with content, people, and environments that strengthened his expanded identity. He stopped watching what pulled him backward, distanced himself from draining conversations, and moved closer to those already walking in higher frequencies. It was like moving to a new country. At first, everything needed translating: thoughts, attitudes, decisions. But over time, he began to think in the language of the new reality. And that what was liberating, because he stopped fighting the old and started feeding the new. No rush, no pressure, just consciousness and consistency. Living on the new timeline required presence, but it also required forgiveness. Not every day would be perfect, but every day could be honest, and honesty with his own state became his new temple. As he sustained the new, the universe began to trust too. Answers came faster. The field adjusted with less friction. Because he wasn't just visiting the future, he was inhabiting the now with a different consciousness. And in doing so, he discovered the quantum shift is not a 1-second leap. It's a path of returning to yourself one step at a time, and along that path, true transformation becomes a new way of existing. Now that you've walked through every step of this journey, tell me honestly, what part of your life is still collapsing a reality that no longer represents you? Are you still trying to change the world without first changing the observer? Are you waiting for a sign from the universe and without realizing that the real sign is the discomfort you feel when living below your true frequency? Maybe today is the moment to stop asking for the new and start living as if you were already there. It's not about waiting for your circumstances to change. It's about shifting the center from where you observe it all. Reality is malleable, but it only bends to those who sustain the frequency. Now tell me in the comments, what was the most powerful insight this video gave you? Which part touched your frequency the most? What are you now committed to changing today? Your sharing might be the mirror someone else was meant to find. If this content brought you clarity, awakening, or even that healing silence, leave a like, turn on the bell, and subscribe to the channel. Because every week we keep walking together on this deep alignment journey, where your being creates, sustains, and expands the reality you were born to live.